All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with my good friend Chris Kozler. Chris, how are you tonight?
I am excellent. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate being on.
Yeah,
Thanks
of
for having
course.
me.
Of course. I'm happy to have you. It's going to be a great conversation. I'm really excited. So thank you for making the time to be a part of this. It's going to be great.
Of course, of course. I couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about passion, Zach.
I love it. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for. So, to everyone listening back home, Chris, someone that I've known for quite a while, and just full transparency, him and I, we've really connected a lot more over the last probably year or so. But we've been in each other's lives, or in similar circles for a lot of our lives. But as you mentioned, he's always happy to talk about passions. Some of his big passions include things like sustainability, energy, the environment, which I think is super cool. He's currently working as a policy data analyst, so that's a very field that I know nothing about. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that. But yeah, I think one of the cool things about Chris is he's a really driven, motivated person. So there's a lot of projects he's done previously and things that he's working on. So I'm excited to hear more about those. So that's a little bit about Chris from a surface level. But do you mind again all the listeners a little bit more of your background, who you are, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
Sure, sure. Yeah, thank you. I thought you nailed it on the head. We go way back. We started at PSAP.
Yeah.
Um, so it's pretty cool to be connecting with the Plymouth community too. Again, um, but a little bit about me. I live now in DC. Or at least in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of DC, about 5 miles from the capital. Um, and I moved down here after college at Michigan State, where I studied international relations and economics, and moved out here following my internship in Australia to work on energy and infrastructure policy here in the U.S. And that was one of two major reasons of why I moved out to DC. The first being uh, probably the career like growth, but then also I was chasing a girl that I got married to about 2 weeks ago. So it worked out pretty well in my favor.
Oh yeah, congratulations too, by the way.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, Professionally, I've spent time as a consultant. I've spent time at a variety of different projects. In the federal space as well as the state government space and like private consulting as well. And basically now like you said, I do work as a policy data analyst, and that's a fancy way of saying that I spend a lot of time reading and writing. So I call myself more of the trade of a writer or an author, because most of my work is spent doing research or writing on a variety of topics in the space. So that's kind of what I'm doing now and kind of how I got there.
Okay.
But my passion is definitely sustainability, and that's kind of why I've been chasing this passion in energy and infrastructure, since it's such a key factor of becoming environmentally sustainable, um,
Right.
to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chris, I'm curious. You have this clear passion for sustainability and everything that kind of comes with that. When did that passion develop, and how did it develop for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, it's kind of developed, I think, ever since I was young. Honestly, I've always enjoyed being outside. I've always enjoyed nature. I've always enjoyed hiking. I was a golfer actually
Right.
um, for most of my childhood growing up, so that's just entailed a lot of time outdoors and spending um, summer days in Michigan outside as much as possible. And I think I just really appreciated the outdoors. And um, I also had grown up as a hunter actually, which so I like, and when you're doing hunter safety and different um, like that types of courses, you learn a lot about how like and ecosystems interact with each other, and that kind of that it's kind of like a cross between biology and ecology and horticulture, like a lot of topics cover that
Yeah.
space, and all of them had struck my curiosity and continue to do so. So I guess it started very young, and it's probably just matured over the course of time as I've learned more about like how we as a society view sustainability in the environment, economically as well as like biologically as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And now this might be a dumb question, or maybe hopefully some people listening at home are wondering maybe the same thing as me. Um, when you went to state and you got your degree, you said it was in international relations and economics. Is that kind of like a logical academic path to kind of get to where you are now and to be,
Mm.
you know, studying about sustainability and writing and researching it? Or was like, would something like maybe biology, like you mentioned, or like ecology, would that have been more of kind of like the traditional path?
I think it really depends.
Okay.
Um, I think that's a hard question to answer. If I think it's kind of goes with any passion. If you really are pursuing it unconditionally, you're probably going to get where you want to go. Um, I'm not sure if a lot of other people you've had on the show have said that, but
Right.
I do believe that's a big factor. I don't necessarily think that my path was traditional, though,
Okay.
to answer your question in short. Um, I would say for the most part, I've kind of worked my way through, kind of going down a variety of different avenues to get here. Um, but it's also at a time like currently in the professional world, sustainability is a pretty hot topic, and anybody
Mm-hmm.
who's interested and like knowledgeable remotely can probably stretch any degree into a space uh, that covers sustainability to some degree.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. I do think that my degree did help significantly in terms of my writing and research capabilities, though.
Okay.
So, like those harder skills of being able to read very dense text and synthesize that into a coherent piece of writing, I think is very valuable. And I think I
Mm-hmm.
attribute most of those skills to the time at Michigan State. And that's kind of the same thing with econ. Like you learn a bit about um, how to analyze patterns in economics, like undergrad, and
Mm-hmm.
those same patterns arise in many similar studies of sustainability, especially in the space of where I work now, where economics of the carbon market is very real. So
Okay.
understanding basic principles of how markets work and how a carbon market would potentially work or something like that is very valuable. So I do think those are useful now, but I don't think like historically that would be a quote unquote track to take.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
uh,
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Um, it's I do think I kind of picked my majors based on what I was most interested at the time. I had a
Okay.
excellent teacher um, uh, in 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 high school, uh, uh, Mr. Southwick. I don't know if you had him, but
Yeah.
he was AP at econ, and he turned me on to economics. And then Mr. Carroll at Plymouth, he turned me on to the international relations space. And those two teachers, I think, really like senior year just completely changed how I looked at the world. And then I was like, that's what I want to go study. And I just picked that one. I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. And everybody asked me, what are you going to do with econ and international relations? Like, what are you actually going to do? And I was like, I've got no idea, but I'll figure it out. Um, and, and I'm really happy I selected those ones because it was just
Yeah.
something I was interested in. And it kept me motivated throughout school to learn on. Um,
Yeah.
which is quite contrary to actually my skill set in high school. I was much better at math and science, like the hard sciences,
Mm-hmm.
according to my like test taking. If you looked at any of those things,
Yeah.
and writing scores on like the ACT were like 14 and like something at like 16 or something were just
Yeah.
horrible. They were just horrible scores compared to my math and my science, which were like in the upper 20s or something like that. I don't remember what they were, but it was so funny. I took like a complete turn into
Yeah.
like exactly what my ACT said I was not good at,
Right.
and then like came out of that I felt like a lot better of a writer and researcher, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. No, and I think that goes back to like what we were talking about a little earlier about just like passions. Like you went into college with this international relations and economics kind of plan, and you didn't necessarily know like what you're going to do with it, but you knew that you enjoyed it, you knew that you were passionate about it, and you kind of just trusted that like this path will lead you to what will be good, like a good path for you
Yes.
because like you're following your passions. You're not just, getting a degree in math because maybe, you tested well on it and you heard that you could get a good job or something. You really focus on what you're passionate about, and that's led you to the avenue that you're down now.
Yeah. 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 Most definitely. I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, especially when you're going to college. It's like if there's any place to make a mistake, it's there. So um, why not chase something you're interested in and see what happens? I did get a little panicked about junior year when I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. Um, but I ended up finding consulting and kind of working my way actually into from the business college. I actually didn't have a lot of support from my college is in the space that I was most interested in, like professionally, like to get a job. So I had to be a little creative myself to find an opportunity. But once you kind of did, it was nice to pursue that. And I felt my skill set was very complementary after leaving college.
For
Yeah.
sure. You just mentioned there that like, you had to be a little creative, and just from talking to you outside of this podcast, I know that you're very driven, you're very motivated. You've um, taken on projects, of your own. You have some things in the works and stuff. So I'm just really curious, Chris, like where has this like kind of mindset come from? Or like have you had like a lot of people mentor you or help you, or like is it just you're just someone that like, if there's a problem and you need to solve it, you'll just figure it out somehow, whatever it takes. What's kind of like your
Um,
experience been with that mindset?
Another good question, Zach. I would say I think the sum of it is kind of I am like as a person, I would describe myself as extremely curious, and
Okay.
that curiosity is I try to itch as often as possible,
Yeah.
and so I think when I guess the older I've gotten and the more I've learned, the more complex my curiosities get. And then I'm
Okay.
like, oh, okay, now, okay, I have to do this to figure out that, or you kind of have to put pieces together in a row. And then before you know it, you've built something, and then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, um, now the ball's kind of rolling. What's next? And so I do think there's like an inherent creativity or passion there, but I
Okay.
do think I've had a lot of experiences growing up where there was a lot of other people who were particularly entrepreneurial or um, had like a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
If we're, I don't, it, That's kind of a new term. I don't know if you and your listeners have talked about that growth mindset very often, but I do think we've talked about it maybe
Yeah.
offline.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, and I do think a lot of people I've been surrounded with are also have that mindset. So I, I think being around people that are also thinking that way has been a tremendous step as well. Um, my dad definitely has a growth mindset. There's no doubt. Like he started a couple businesses as I was a kid, and I got to watch those kind of uh, grow and kind of, I mean, ultimately dissipate. But at the same time, uh, watching that experience kind of in real time is definitely a contributing factor um, to seeing that it's okay to take a risk. It's try your best,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Um, but always knowing that you kind of have that safety net or something, like you can always pick yourself back up. I really do believe that, and uh, that's I guess where it probably comes from. I do think my parents are pretty inspiring.
Okay.
My mom is a teacher,
Right.
and so she's. I think she probably naturally had like built that into me
Yeah.
as a child, me probably subconsciously to myself, but I'm sure she had a big contributing factor to that as well.
Right.
I just think it's important to always learn and just
Yeah.
adapt at the best you can, and I'm also an optimist.
Hmm.
So I believe in good things will happen
Yeah,
if you're a good person. And I just don't let anything really phase me, or I try not to let things phase me. I get phased, uh, but I
sure,
try to avoid it.
sure.
Yeah.
Right. So, something that you mentioned, Chris, was just that, like, you can always pick yourself back up, and, maybe in college, or maybe, you know, around our age now, in our 20s, is a time where we can take risks and, kind of make mistakes and stuff. So I think a word that gets thrown around a lot within people around our age, or, in college, fresh out of college, is the word failure, right? Like, I'm a failure, because X, Y, Z. Do you think that it is possible to fail in life, or do you think that it's like it's all about kind of the way that you like look at it with the perspective of, like, like you said, life's about learning. So, like, if you learn, is it really a failure?
um, I mean, I would say no.
Okay.
um, um, I I just feel like we're only on the planet for like 80 to 100 years, maybe 100
Yeah.
years doing you did really good. And like, I just, um, just don't feel like it's worth wasting energy thinking, oh no, I failed,
Yeah.
or I am a failure. I'd rather just spend my time thinking, okay, yeah, that didn't work out as planned. Um, and maybe that effort was a failure, but the effort wasn't uh, like itself a failure. Maybe like the activity was a failure, but the effort was a success in the sense that I tried what I thought was going to work and it did not work.
Hmm.
And then you can kind of deconstruct that.
Yeah.
And it's, um, I think it helps to be curious about it. I think it's to ask questions. The more questions you ask, like, oh, why didn't that work? Or the more you kind of learn, and the more you can then not do that again. I know I started when I first moved down here. I started my first blog,
Right.
and we've talked about this before, and that basically I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I had a good idea, and that thing crashed and burned within 6 months of starting, without a doubt. Um, and basically, the blog just never had any like cool features or anything like that. But so I basically would wrap that project in the failure bucket. However, I wouldn't say the experience was a failure. The experience was I learned how to build a website. I learned what good copywriting looks like. I learned how to um, get pictures online that are not copywritten by somebody else already.
Right.
you know, um, and so like lots of those types of unique skills that I probably wouldn't have ever figured out if I didn't just kind of try. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That,
So
I mean, that's a perfect answer, and that's kind of where I was hoping you would take it. I think that we do get, maybe hyper fixated on things being a failure, and like you said, it's maybe like that activity didn't go as planned or didn't work out, and maybe you could, classify that as a failure, but like the efforts behind it, or what you learned from it, or just like having that curiosity of, like, well, why didn't that blog work out, or why didn't that company I started work out, or why didn't that way
sure,
I'm studying for the exam work out. And I think that when we have that genuine curiosity, it can just help us, think about the future. And I mean, we live in a world where, social media is so around us, where it's like, I think it almost tricks us into thinking that everything is going to be, a success on your first attempt, or everything's going to
sure,
be an overnight success, when in reality it's like, you it's going to take time, and it's going to take learning
absolutely.
and growth. And I think that when you have that mindset and that curiosity you mentioned, you're never really failing. You're just kind of, stumbling closer to what the end goal or result is going to be.
Yeah, I would agree. I think to kind of continue that analogy you have there, it's like really the difference between the like the get rich quick scheme and like
Hmm.
building wealth. I would say like building wealth has like those ebbs and flows, but over time you become successful. And then the rich quick is like you're gonna like try burn, and like most people are gonna burn out, and then some people will like find like a high degree of success.
Right.
And it's just not fair to compare those two things one to one. I actually got
Exactly.
a question on this topic for you. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm curious. Would you say most people, I guess the people that you have on the show, or people in your life the most, do you guys that this concept of failure or success or whatnot, um, does that also correlate or correspond to the view of an output versus an experience? Do you understand what I'm saying
Yeah. I
out there?
believe I do. And if I'm interpreting it correctly, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I actually had this conversation. It was yesterday, actually, in the sense of kind of
Look at
like,
that.
and right, and again, the way that I'm taking it is that like having the mentality that everything you do in life, there has to be like you have to accomplish something, or like it has to be a success. Like you can't, if you like try like if you go to a cooking class and work before, if you burn like your meal, it's a failure, everything's over, you wasted your time, you wasted your money. Kind of like having that mindset, but then realizing like that's not how it has to be. Like you don't have to succeed, or not everything you have to do has to result in something. You can do things just for fun, or just because we're humans and we want to enjoy life.
Yeah, right, right.
Is that kind of what you're getting at with that?
Uh, kind of. I would say
Okay.
like I just think that I've met a lot of people that is like, especially, I mean, a lot of people in my career space have been very highly skilled or like highly
Hmm.
determined, ambitious people. I
Sure.
think that's what it's very common in like early consultants. A lot of people very similar to myself, but I think a lot of people that I had met or still talk to or whatever, sometimes get overly fixed on the output of something,
Okay.
where the output is not necessarily the goal. Although it is the goal of like the project X,
Hmm.
um, that you getting too fixated on that output then makes you think, even if the output is 70% successful, which is overall success, you
Yeah.
still get upset about the 30% that didn't work out. And
Okay.
it's like, no, like think of it this way. I think it's much more productive to view it as, okay, this is an experience. I was trying to get 100%. I got 70%. That's still
Hmm.
success. Although the output wasn't what I envisioned when I started, the experience of me doing that was 100% successful, because it was still a win. It
Yeah.
wasn't a complete loss. Or um, it even works, even applies that same methodology as like, even if it was a complete failure and you made like, let's say you got a 40% success, that other 60% is probably learning of what screwed up,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So that experience, all in all, would still be a growth opportunity or a
For
chance
sure.
to continue. I guess that's kind of what I was talking about. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
it's very common that people, that when they start saying failure, start describing an output.
Yeah.
And especially in terms of like projects, if like most projects have so many extraneous factors that you can't control them all. So if something
Right.
just, and it's just bad luck, then it's just bad luck.
Right.
It's just an external factor that did actually ultimately impact the output, but then
Right.
people get stuck on that
Yeah.
negative output, and I'm like, stop thinking that way.
Right. No, no, I appreciate you elaborating on that, and yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm guilty of that. There's been several times in my life where, like Chris was saying, it's like I have like a vision that's this is 100%, what it needs to be done, and I do it 95%. I'm like, wow, it's all a failure because that 5% I just ruminate and fixate on it. But it's honestly, I think something that like has helped me over the last few years is just like I always want things to work out 100%. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong, but
yeah,
like I've
of
kind of
course, everybody
adopted the
does.
mindset that like 50%, like halfway there, like that's huge. That's a win. I mean, even if it's only like 20%, like that's still progress, and kind of flipping it around, like you're saying that 80% would be kind of what you've learned and how you can grow from it. But I think, yeah, like I think it comes to with like having kind of like an all or nothing mentality. At least that's like how I struggle with it. Is like if I'm not 100%, accomplishing whatever, then it's a failure. And I think
Sure.
it's really good that you mentioned that and you brought that up, because I think that that's something that probably resonate with a lot of people. And it's kind of switching that mindset to like you said, like even if it's like 40 or sorry, like 60-70%, like that's not a failure by any means.
Right. No, like, I mean, chances are, I mean, especially if it's a personal goal,
Yeah,
like, I think there's a lot can be said about like professional goals, because professional goals have a lot of external factors as well. But personal goals, like sometimes the biggest step on a personal goal is just taking action to pursue that goal.
exactly.
Like, because I feel like there's a lot of people that will spend time on like trying to figure out what exactly do we want to pursue here, but then they spend so much time like thinking about it that by the time they actually pull the trigger, they kind of miss the timing, or
Yeah.
or maybe they lose steam because they spent so much time thinking about it that by the time they actually start taking action, they're like, I'm kind of beyond this, because when you start a project, like a personal goal project, most of the time you have to sit down and like write stuff down. And it's
Hmm.
kind of annoying. I'm speaking from personal experience here, to think about something in your head for months, and then you start taking pen to paper and realize, oh, wow, I need to write all this stuff down. And,
Right.
and then by the time you start getting all the stuff down, you're like, I'm bored. Can we
Yeah.
do the next thing?
Yeah.
And yeah, um, so like even in that sense, like 10%, like you just start. Ah, great, great,
Right.
we're moving.
Yeah.
um,
And I
yeah,
think that just the mentality of just like getting started on things is a huge kind of theme that I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast about. Like, you'll hear people that say like, oh, I want to start a business. I want to start being a content creator. I want to try to be like an influencer on social media. I want to, do XYZ, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And it's like, we'll use like the, content creation or something as in this example. Like someone will say that, but then they'll be like, okay, like I want to do that, but I have to go, like first I have to raise like $5,000 so I can go buy a camera, and then I have to hire an editor, and then I have to get, all these softwares on my
yeah,
computer to edit and stuff, and then I have to get like a lapel mic and like all this stuff. And it's really like all you truly need to do is start.
right,
That's the
right.
secret there. Just like
Yeah,
take your
that
phone.
is the secret.
Everyone has a cell phone. I
Yeah,
would
these little
I will
computers.
bet almost everyone has a cell phone that's listening to this. Like just pull it out and start recording a video. And like I think it's just
Uh-huh.
like we get so caught up in like the, oh, I have to have like, it has to be the best. It has to be the best. I have to have the highest quality. You have to have all the equipment, whatever. And even like you and I, in a kind of a little bit of a different way, had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago when like I was talking about golf. I was like, oh, like I don't know if the clubs I have are any good. And you're like, their clubs, just go swing them and go hit the golf
Right,
ball. And it's
right.
like, like I'm sitting over here like, oh, like is my driver gonna be able to like, do what I need it to do and stuff like that. But it's like we get so caught up in like these little things that really, not to say that they don't matter, but like the biggest part of like for me, I have not golfed and I want to golf. So just go do it. That's the big step. If you want to do creation, take out your cell phone, record a video, because like
Yep,
I think when we don't try, we don't even, how do we even know if we're gonna like it or if we're
right.
passionate about it? So I think that's
Absolutely.
like the big thing. Just get started.
Yeah, absolutely get started. Especially with like all the technology at our fingertips now, like getting started is like it's getting easier and easier.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what it was like starting a podcast in like 10 years ago, but
Right.
it's definitely not the same as starting a podcast now.
Yeah.
um, or even like I'm like I said, I'm a writer, so um, being able to access everything in the cloud is very nice. But I mean, putting pen to paper is the first step. I mean, most of my writing that I publish myself is pretty much like version 7, version 8 of the
Okay.
same content, um, or at least maybe I'll have 1 page of what's the final product,
Yeah.
but I'll have 9 pages of research or writing or ideas that I just chopped because I didn't like how it sounded.
Right.
And like that process and just takes time, but you could never get that 1 page of what you really want unless you wrote all the other eight
Mm-hmm.
pages to get to get what you were trying to say the first time around. I don't know.
Exactly.
It's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. I don't know how some people do it. Some people can pick up a pen and just write and just nail it. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys do that. I just
Right.
don't. It just does not work that way for me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You might hate me a little bit, but that was me all throughout like school, grad school, and everything. Like all my professors were like, yeah, like do an outline and then take your outline and then do like a rough draft, second draft, third draft, so on and so forth. Like even my thesis, like I literally just opened up my computer, started typing, and then like that was it. So
Dang.
I don't know. I can't promise
I'm
that like I'm
jealous.
always the highest quality of work, but I can tell you that I got a master's. I passed my classes. I got good enough grades.
Hey,
So
you
it
killed it.
worked well enough for me.
Yeah, you're much better than I. you're just more skilled.
Eh,
uh,
maybe with kind of the going with the flow type thing, but I think when it comes to research and writing, I think you're very, very highly regarded and up there with your skill set.
well, thank you. But
Of course.
the point being, it takes
Yeah.
time. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
like, but starting, all goes back to
Yes.
just start, just
Yeah.
do your thing,
It
um,
does. Yep.
and
Yeah.
be original. Be
Yeah.
original. That's another trap. I fell into that trap when like that first blog failure. I fell
Okay.
into the trap of I was rewriting a lot of stuff that other people had already kind of said, and I was
Mm.
like, that's, honestly, I kind of learned like, hey, that's a waste of your time to be recapping what other people said. What you should do is start with something that no one has said, and then
Yeah.
figure out what other people have said that supports your idea,
Yeah.
and then you've got something to work on. Where, yeah, I find that to be an interesting trap to fall into. And I've been there, so
Yeah.
that's
I'm
why
really
I can
glad that you brought that
talk about
up.
it.
Yeah, I think that that's great because like I think anytime we try to do creative endeavors or even I think like athletics, like I grew up playing sports and I remember I'd
Sure.
watch specific athletes and be like, "Oh, I'm going to go in the driveway and try to shoot a basketball like so and so or whatever." And I think it's like it's totally okay and normal. And there's like so much out there that it's hard not to like be influenced by other people in the space. But I think like Chris was saying, just be original, be yourself. I mean, I think that like with kind of the passions that Chris had and everything, like if I want to read about sustainability, like I want to read it and I want to hear Chris's thoughts and his perspective. I don't really want to hear what everyone else thinks because then I would just Google it and not have
Sure.
Chris as my source. So I think that's a big,
Sure.
I'm really glad you said that. And to anyone listening, like whatever you want to do, especially if it's creative, just be original. And it's totally
Yes.
fine to take influence and to take, techniques from others, but just make it your own. And it's
Sure.
probably going to resonate so much
And
better with people.
yeah, yeah. It also like makes like when with all creative endeavors, like build off of what other people have already done.
Yeah.
Like I spent a long time playing guitar. I mean, I still play guitar, but in
Hmm.
college, I really was like pursuing guitar because I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I
Yeah.
thought I was going to be a musician. And then I was like, oh, "You're not going to be a musician, Chris. You're not that good at guitar." and then I was like, "Okay," but you start like when you start dabbling in like playing music and like jamming with your buddies and stuff, like it always starts with like, okay, what did they play for this song? Like one thing and then make it sound cool.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's totally, totally. I build on what other people have done and then bring
Hmm.
your own twist and um, and just be happy with what you're
Yeah.
producing. Um, and if you, the way I see it is if it makes you happy and if one other person can learn from what you're doing or can think of the world in a new creative endeavor that you pursued, then like that's a win.
Yeah.
Um, in my book, um, like
100%.
yeah, every
And
time.
that's the exact same mentality that I've had with this podcast, with anything that I've done creatively in my life. It's always been if it brings me joy and I feel happy about it, and if like
Oh,
one person in the world says that, oh, like that helped me, that benefited me, that made me feel better, whatever, like that's a win. That's all that matters to me. Like
yep.
I think that when we can detach ourselves from the outcome of like fame, success, money, whatever, and just do it for the love of it and to try to have a positive impact. It
Hmm.
just it's like going through on like easy mode. Like nothing else matters. Like you're just
Sure.
enjoying it. You're just enjoying the process, and I think that that's huge because like if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's just gonna lead to burnout.
Yes, I love it. I love that you just said that. Like, enjoy the process, enjoy the
Yeah,
journey. Um, like, it's so crucial, um,
exactly.
because um, yeah, I definitely think it's very easy to get in the pursuit of fame or in the pursuit
Hmm.
of money or whatever, because it just happens to be right in front of your face all the time on our
Sure.
phones. Um, but um, just that's why I kind of love this podcast. Just pursue something that you love and don't look back.
Yeah.
uh, what like it's just that sounds awesome.
No, I
I think
appreciate that.
it's a good way to live.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of spitting it on you a bit, pursuing something that, you enjoy, enjoying the process and just going for it. I know that you have some things that you've been working on, some new things in the works.
Yeah, I do. I do. I have been working on the sustainability business even further. I have started a company called Pike Origin. It's at pikeorigin.com. It's going to be essentially a round two of a blog, but a much more niche and tailored um, newsletter media outlet there, and kind of with the ultimate goal of uh, being able to help businesses and business owners uh, turn their existing businesses or start a new business even that's sustainable. And that's kind of been my pursuit. I believe that it's possible to have business that is sustainable over both environmentally and over like the long financial sustainability, which is like the typical term that
Hmm.
really has been linked to for decades. Um, but it also includes now like environmental sustainability and social sustainability and cultural sustainability, all those other sustainability accents, if you will. And
Hmm.
I just believe that can exist in the world. And what I am doing with Pike Origin is I want it to be a place where I can take what I've learned in my experience and build on those experiences with real world examples, like case studies, and explain kind of blueprints of how to build a sustainable business. And I think I don't know how many businesses there are in the U.S., but there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And, and the whole goal is if I could be and not only an advocate, but somebody who can help those businesses um, be more sustainable, like one at a time, like that'd be my success. And so that's kind of what I'm doing at Pike Origin. That is what I'm pursuing um, to kind of grow. My newsletter is going to be starting this fall,
Okay.
uh, and essentially that newsletter it is a blueprint for how to build a sustainable business, and how to implement climate solutions within your communities. And um, I hope it's helpful. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the goal. So um, that's my most recent endeavor, and I'm excited to be pursuing it and writing on it. And I'm hoping that I can earn a lot of engagement from others and try to help people the best I can. So that is it.
I love it. That's awesome. And I think,
Yeah.
something that really hit home with me when you were kind of talking about that endeavor is that like you want to help people and you want to help companies and businesses. And I think that that's really what shines through. Like it's, when you have that mentality of like you just want to help, you want to make a positive impact, I guarantee you, like you're going to do that. You're going to do it in ways that you don't even realize it because you're going at it in really like a kind of selfless, without ego kind of approach to it. And I'm not trying to like, put
Well,
you on a pedestal right now and say like you're the greatest human being in the world. But what I mean, like to everyone listening, is
I
that like
appreciate that.
what like Chris's intentions are that he just wants to help the environment, help the world, and just
Yeah.
provide value to others. And it's not like there's no malicious intent. Like that's genuinely who he is as a person. So now he's trying to leverage that in an endeavor. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, it'd be great to, make money on it and get engagement and stuff like that. But like,
Sure.
you're not doing it for those reasons. And that's very clear hearing you talk about it and just knowing how passionate you are about it, which I think is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going, if you kind of take a step back, the way I kind of see the world is that most of the world that we live in, like the United States,
Hmm.
needs to rebuild a lot
Yeah.
of what we have here. I'm talking everything from infrastructure to how we get our like electricity to like our roads, sewer systems, waterways, like everything, buildings, just agriculture too.
Hmm.
Every aspect of that um, is just like the planet cannot sustain how it was built for the last 50 years. And
Right.
um, it's not political. I try to make that not political, but it always is.
Sure.
I live in DC, but
Right.
the truth is like that it all has to be rebuilt. And it is not a bad thing that it has to be rebuilt. It is also just old. Like most of the stuff that we have was built in the 70s, like a lot
Hmm.
of major infrastructure projects. And it's just kind of ended its life. Most of the lifespans on major infrastructure projects are probably like 50, 80, and on a really good project, maybe 100 years. But for the most part, they never last 100 years anyways. So all of that stuff needs to be rebuilt. So there's all the businesses that go into rebuilding and revitalizing and just restructuring everything has to happen. And so like, why not make it a sustainable endeavor? Like, because there's essentially a choice here that could be made from like a U.S. perspective or like a local perspective even. Um, you can choose to build something the way it's always been done and just redo it. Or you can like try to take an innovative approach and make it sustainable over the long term and like try to increase the livability of the planet that we live on. And I just think that second option is just such a more clear option
Right.
of like, hey, we're already going to be spending money on this. We're already going to be spending effort and time, like developing all of these like plans or whatnot, and might as well let's think of it as a sustainability opportunity and rebuild this thing the right way, so generations after us can actually live here.
Hmm.
And I think there's just a lot of other factors in terms of like climate that have for large projects like this too. Like especially with like extreme weather events, it's not as popular in Michigan actually. Michigan's actually a nice state in terms of extreme weather events.
Right.
There's not very many that happen there, but it's growing in the world. So that also adds a layer of complexity as well. Of hey, we got to rebuild anyways after a
Hmm.
hurricane hits. Let's build it the right way, the best we can, in a sustainable way. And that's kind of what I'm pursuing. Um,
Yeah.
in Pike Origin. I think a lot of there's so many businesses that are part of that building effort. I mean, any business that is successful is building something or providing something. So why not do it in a sustainable way over the next 30 years, and
Right.
then like and beyond, obviously. Um, I just think there's a lot of rethinking that's got to happen,
Yeah.
especially as we're kind of at a generational gap in the workforce. Um, I think there's a lot of that baby boomer generation is um, moving on to retirement, and
Hmm.
then it's also like Gen Z is kind of coming into the workforce. So at the same time, like that completely different work styles, um,
Yeah.
um, and like different perspectives on the world as well. So I think that's also going to be a key factor in the next decade or so. Um, and I just want sustainability to be part of that discussion, and I think it is actually. It's
Hmm.
quite popular, like at this point in time, and I think it'll continue to get more and more popular. I just think that there's a gap between of wanting to do something sustainable and then knowing how to execute.
Hmm.
And that gap is where I'm trying to try my best. I think I have a unique perspective there to bring to the table. And that's what I hope to do at the Pike Origin.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And with Pike Origin, I know that like this has been something that you've been working on for a while, and um, you mentioned that you have a newsletter coming in the fall.
hmm
So like I guess are you currently like what's the current state of Pike Origin, or like what are you doing with it, or like are people able to kind of check it out now and learn about what you're doing and kind of get prepared for the newsletter, or what's that kind of look like?
Sure. Excellent question. Thanks. Right now, I got a website last year. So I started the project essentially 2 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and my brother and I founded the business last year. We built a website and wrote like a bunch of content. We got a homepage. We've got some resources up there. We've got kind of an about us, like some basics. So if you want to check it out, that's all on the website at pikeorigin.com.
Okay.
Uh, and then you can also sign up for the newsletter there as well. And then in terms of like I'm working on like I said, I'm planning a launch in the fall.
Hmm.
I actually got some excellent advice from another content creator such as yourself. What I mean is you to build some content before I start, before kind of launching off in that endeavor, and that's kind of what I'm working on now, building up that kind of that's going to look like upon all when it launches,
Yeah.
and building out those initial newsletters. I've kind of worked my way up to about 4 months of content at this point, so
Okay.
I'm like cruising along, but kind of like we were talking earlier on this call. I mean, I started where I thought my head was supposed to go. And what ultimately happened was as soon as I started writing that, I actually completely restructured the strategy
Hmm.
to how the content would be released. And also, I couldn't just jump into some of my ideas without explaining some ideas that are kind of prerequisites. So I
Right.
had to like kind of reverse engineer, like, oh, I can't talk about a sustainable business without talking about how to hire somebody sustainably, or I couldn't talk about a sustainable business if I don't explain like how does a business actually operate within this space.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of had to take a step back um, and and kind of work there. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the state at this point.
Okay.
And I've just yeah.
Perfect.
I
No.
enjoy working on it. It's something I work on the side. It's obviously not my day job, so it doesn't pay any bills. It is a passion project of mine. So um, work on it when I get time, and that's
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Okay.
But if any of your listeners are interested, pikeorigin.com is where to check it out. And obviously, if anybody is ever interested to reach out or is curious on more details or just wants to like collaborate or something on a project, I'm more than happy to connect as well. And like reaching out through the website is probably the best way because that just
Okay.
emails me directly. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll make sure to throw the website in the description of the episode and everything, and pikeorigin.com, again, the website, hearing it verbally, I'll also put it in the description. So, uh, check it out, sign up for the newsletter, be anticipating that in the fall. And yeah, like Chris said, if you want to, reach out and collaborate, if you have any thoughts, if
hmm
are in a similar kind of industry or maybe the same industry, I mean, reach out. I think Chris is a fantastic resource and person to and pick his mind and share ideas with. So I definitely encourage anyone, especially if you have a passion about some of these similar topics, to get in touch. And it's funny because you mentioned like hiring people sustainably, and that just like piqued my interest. And it's like, oh, okay, that's my whole professional career. Like I think we're gonna have to talk after the call at some point about how I can incorporate kind of sustainability with my own endeavors, whether that's within my current job role, or as I think about the rest of my life, the other projects that I want to take on. How can I, from like a HR, hiring manager, trainer, like how can I be sustainable? So I'm excited
Sure.
to pick your brain
Yeah,
on that
yeah,
too.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We'll definitely have to connect offline on that.
Awesome.
That's a it's quite a topic. This
Yeah.
is also one of those ideas that it's like, I want to write one page, but I currently have like six. So
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm not even close to getting to that one page. I'm just like, I don't even know where my head's at yet.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
love it.
it's nice to. I'm telling you, being curious, man,
Yeah,
takes you down so many rabbit holes.
it
I find
does.
myself in rabbit holes all the time.
It's the best.
Yeah, yes, I
Awesome.
enjoy.
So,
I enjoy
Chris,
it.
I do want to ask you, kind of based on what I actually just said about myself, kind of being interested with the hiring sustainability. To anyone that's listening to us talk right now, maybe sustainability is maybe a little newer to them, or maybe they've heard it, but they're not too familiar with it. Like what? And I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can answer this, but like, what's something that like your average everyday person, someone listening to the podcast, myself, like what's something that we can do to help just better the world and lead to more sustainability for the world that we live in?
Ah, that's a tough one. Um, I think that the. All right, I'm going to answer this in two ways.
Okay.
I think a as an individual, you have a choice to make purchases and you have purchasing decisions, and I think that is probably your most powerful
Okay.
method. Um, and I say that's powerful in the sense of where your dollars are going. Money follows ideas essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
if you really believe in something, I'd probably like put your like spend money in one way over an alternative. However, I also understand that that's also like sustainable like products and whatnot is also like kind of a luxury at this point. So it's
Mm-hmm.
also like not in everybody's cards. So I guess like alternatively, I think voting is important, and then I also think being involved locally in your local communities is probably where uh, you can get the most bang for your buck. And what I mean by that is most localities um, and like local governments have offices that are engaged in protecting the environment or a more sustainable like city, and those offices are often connected in a shape or form to their business development operations of that same local company. So being engaged in those forums, whether you're a neighborhood HOA or if you're a neighborhood like association, or just a individual who's in your local community that wants to have a say, like going to things like there's like opportunities, but there's also like environmental meetings in most localities. Just go to those things. Most of the time, they are not well frequented, and the people that do go actually have like a significant chunk more of like their voice being heard by the local governments. And I think local governments are kind of the key piece to like long-term sustainability because they are the ones that have the most direct impact on like your world.
Yeah.
Then like I wouldn't worry too much about like state or like federal even. Like those are downstream, like they may affect your locality, but I think your local community is like the best place to start. So being engaged in those organizations and the local probably the most bang for your buck.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. I think that's great advice, and it kind of gives anyone listening and even myself a good starting
Yeah.
point of like how we can, be more active with it and kind of, creating a sustainable community, especially the community that we live in, right? Like
Yeah.
we want, sustainability in the world and the country and, everything, but also like we'll see kind of the direct impacts in our own communities. So why not,
Yeah.
be an active voice within that?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something you're also welcome to reach out. I love looking into these things too. And I think it's just so you can do a lot in those types of meetings. I know I'll go occasionally to like a zoning meeting,
Hmm.
and zoning sounds particularly boring, but there's normally like 8 people on these calls. I live in a county of over 250,000 people, and there's like 8 people, maybe 12 depending on the project, and like being only one of like 8 people to make a comment on a proposal, because the proposal cuts down all the trees, uh, is kind of nice to say that,
Yeah.
and um, I live in a particularly dense neighborhood, so like cutting down one large tree when it's the only large tree that is in the vicinity of like 12 houses, then it's a big deal.
Right.
Where it's not as big of a deal when it's every house has like 4, you know.
Right.
Um, so I think those are really huge. I think local governments also are, uh, thanks to some major bills and stuff, at the federal level and the state level, the state levels even, have a lot of money for local governments to help and support these causes or sustainability goals, because a
Okay.
lot of localities actually are taking are actually way ahead of sustainability in their own communities than the federal government or like the state government, just because they're smaller, they're quicker to allocate resources
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um, so I think those taking part in your local elections and taking part in your local communities is key.
I love it. Yeah. I think it's, a great privilege or luxury that we have when we can be involved in our local communities and,
Mm-hmm.
local elections and such. So definitely, I know, I'll even say from firsthand experiences, I know it can be intimidating. You might feel a little overwhelmed or like not like feel qualified to have a voice in these kind of things, but just give it a shot and do some learning on your own and see what make what makes the most sense to you, and maybe consult with other people that maybe are more professionals in the topic, or just don't be afraid to learn. And as Chris has mentioned throughout this conversation, like just be curious, and even if you feel like everything's so overwhelming or there's so much information, you have a voice for a reason, and you can make a much bigger impact than you might think you can. So definitely, I think getting involved
Without a
locally is
doubt.
a great way to start.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. I think people would be pleasantly surprised on actually how much voice you can get sometimes at the local level. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I was surprised when I
Yeah.
first started going to some of these meetings. I was like, whoa, okay, this is I did not expect this,
Right.
because you like I don't know, I you just don't really think of that
Hmm.
growing up, or like school doesn't really teach you that. I know we had civics class, but
Sure.
maybe it just wasn't the same. Like they don't really teach you how to actually engage with your
Right.
representatives and stuff like that. And like when you actually start doing it, it's actually quite incredible, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
wow, this is nice. This is nice that we have a democracy
Exactly.
and people who care about these like organized governments and such.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
agree. So
So
definitely take advantage of it wherever you are. Like if you're in my area, by all means, let's take advantage of it here. If you're in a different state, different area, just don't be afraid to get involved in kind of the local government around your own surroundings. But I think that's been
mhm.
great advice. And Chris, as we're wrapping things up and everything, do you have like any final thoughts or words that you want to leave our listeners with today?
um, well, I would just say pursue your passions. I stand by it. I think I'm in a good spot in my life right now, and I'm very happy with my life, and um, that growth mindset, being an optimist and pursuing passions is very important and near and dear to my heart. So, um, to all those listeners out there who's like thinking about it, just do it. Just send it. You're gonna kill it. Like I promise you. Um, like it's a good way to live, and I'm just so happy that you are doing this project of yours to help share that idea and that message. I think it's just so important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that that's a great message that, Chris just shared. And, like you said, if you're listening and there's something that you want to do, like go for it, go at it, get started. And here's where I'll always put in my open invitation. If you are sitting there listening and Chris just motivated you to go pursue your passion, start it, reach out to me, email me, message me, text me, call me, whatever, and you will have a spot on this podcast, and we will talk about that passion and what you're doing with it and why it's important to you, and you will have the platform to share all about it. So that's my open invitation to anyone listening. The more that we talk about our passions, the more that we can share the process and the journey, I think the more lives we can impact and the more people we can inspire. So keep having these conversations. And Chris, I'm honored that you came on
Yes.
to share your passion and to have this conversation. And I have no doubt that if you want, this will not be the end of your time on the podcast. We'll definitely have to have you back in the future and, talk
I'd
about
love to.
a bunch of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to be back. I'd love to be back.
Awesome.
I've got so many passions. So we
Yeah.
could pick a different one next time.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
I
No, this has
love
been
it.
awesome. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me, Zach.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate this.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. As we talked about a little bit previously, Chris's website will be in the description of this episode, so go ahead and check it out. Get ready for that newsletter coming this fall. And again, if you have any thoughts, want to connect, any questions or anything, directly on that website is going to be the best way to get in touch with Chris. So that will all be in the description. But again, it's been awesome. I'm excited for everything that is coming your way with Bike Origin, and just with everything you're doing. It's great to just follow your journey and to be a supporter of you. And I'm excited for the newsletter to come out myself. I know I'll be subscribing to it, and I encourage everyone else
Thank
to
you.
subscribe as well and to check it out and see how we can continue to push the vision forward for a better world that we can all live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.